Now, French onion soup was nothing more in the 1800s in Paris than onions, water, a little, usually butter, just to saute them, and then maybe a cup of white wine. But they just cooked it and cooked it down, deglazed the pan, cook it down, deglaze the pan. And that fond, that stuff on the bottom of the pan, when you deglazed it, turned that water rich mahogany.
Nice.
Now, you needed 3 or 4 hours to do
not
that.
longer.
When 1900, 1920 came around, when this recipe came to this country, beef stock was really the basis for it, as it still is today, because no one wants to spend 3 or 4 hours doing it. But it was about the onions and about basic flavor. So we want to use a slow cooker.
That's right.
We want some of that rich flavor,
Yeah.
not just take some canned stock, but enhance that to do an American version of this recipe, but do it in a slow cooker.
That's why I'm here. And that's really, it was a tall order to do that, because if you just took all the ingredients from a French onion soup recipe and you threw it into the slow cooker and turned it on, you'd have a very watery, bland, pale white soup, because there's no evaporation, there's no fond, there's no caramelization. So the name of the game here is to develop as much flavor as you can with the onions in the slow cooker and then add the broth. So we're gonna start by putting 4 tablespoons of butter into the slow cooker, and we're gonna turn it on high and let that butter melt while we prep our ingredients. And of course, onions, lots of onions. This is 4 pounds of onions, which is about 6 large onions. And you wanna cut them from pole to pole. Now that's the best way to slice an onion if you're gonna put it into a soup, because it's not as stringy as if you cut those rainbow slices. So you slice it in half, put it flat side down, and then just angle your knife as you slice through. And we were looking for about 1/4 inch thick slices. So again, that's 4 pounds of onions. We're just gonna add these onions on top of the butter, which has already started to melt. You can see that really fills up the slow cooker, but of course, they'll wilt down substantially as they cook. And now we're gonna add some aromatics, and this is a tablespoon of brown sugar, 2 teaspoons of table salt, a teaspoon of black pepper, and a teaspoon of fresh minced thyme. So up until now, everything we've added to the slow cooker is pretty expected. You'd find those ingredients in any French onion soup. But now things are gonna get a little interesting. There's no intensification of the flavor in the slow cooker, so you gotta add a lot of flavor. And so we're gonna start with a little flour. That's a thickener, and this is 5 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. Pretty unusual for a French onion soup recipe.
So far, you haven't left the farm.
No.
You're still okay.
Dry sherry. This is 3/4 of a cup, which is a substantial amount. But what we found with the slow cooker, instead of really reducing those flavors and intensifying, it tends to get washed out. So you have to add a little bit of extra. Now we're gonna add something very unusual that's not French, which is soy sauce. This is a 1/4 cup of soy sauce. And of course, it has that deep roasted flavor. And that really helps the soup take on some dimension. And finally, this is apple butter. And what it does is adds that really silky texture to the soup, but you won't be able to detect it. It doesn't have any distinct notes to it, so it really does meld well into the flavor of the soup.
You get a pass until the taste.
Yeah. So we're gonna whisk this together. All right, we're gonna add this to the slow cooker. And of course, we're just gonna stir this around so it's a little more evenly distributed. And one more ingredient goes into this pot, and it's beef bones. You mentioned earlier that beef broth is usually used to make a really deep flavored soup. You can buy these guys right in the supermarket, and of course, roasting them brings out their flavor. We found a cheater way to roast them in the microwave for about 8 to 10 minutes. So we're gonna nestle these into the slow cooker right around the edge where the heating elements are so it can really see the heat. Nestle this one in here. And that's it. You notice no broth. In fact, we're not gonna put any liquid in this soup until the very end, because that is how you develop that deep caramelized flavor on the onions, by letting them cook for a long time. You're gonna put the lid on, and this will take anywhere from 10 to 12 hours to cook down and get really deep and caramelized, depending on your slow cooker. But just as an insurance, we're gonna check it after 8 hours, make sure it's not burning anywhere.
Okay.
So it's not French onion soup without the bread on top and all that melty, gooey cheese. But to do that, you really need some of those broiler-safe crocks, which not everybody has. So we came up with a solution that anyone can do using any kind of bowls. And that is, we're gonna toast the bread on its own, and then when the bread is nice and toasty, we're gonna put the Gruyere on and throw it under the broiler so it's bubbly. So these are gonna go into a 400-degree oven until they're toasted, and that takes about 8 to 10 minutes. Don't those smell amazing?
Yeah, I'll just take these.
They look good.
No, I'm going.
So again, we baked them for about 10 minutes till they were golden, then put the shredded Gruyere cheese on and broiled them for a couple minutes until they got bubbly. So now it's time to take a look at our soup. Oh, do you smell that?
It's amazing how much that's cooked down.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So now we're gonna fish out those beef bones. Make sure you drain all the juice out of there. All right, now obviously we didn't add any broth to this soup yet. Now's the time we're gonna add it, just before serving. We're gonna use 2 cups of low sodium chicken broth mixed with 2 cups of beef broth. And it's that combination that really has a good full flavor. Of course, we heated these up in the microwave so they're nice and hot.
Wait, it does look good.
Doesn't it look delicious? Put a little bit in your bowl. There you are. Here's some tongs for those toasts. You can float them right on top. Oh, look at the color of that soup.
I have to say, that's really good.
That texture of the soup is silky, and it has that complexity of flavor.
So there you have it, a entirely new way of doing French onion soup in the slow cooker. And the problem was the slow cooker washes out flavor. We had a lot of onions to start. We had to find a way to boost flavor. Soy sauce helped. Apple butter, an unusual ingredient, but it was great. And then beef bones that were microwaved and put in to add real beefy flavor. And finally, after 10 to 12 hours, then we added the chicken stock, 2 cups, and also beef stock, 2 cups. So their nice, fresh flavor came in just at the end. So there you have it from Cook's Country, an all-new way to do a fabulous version of slow cooker French onion soup. You can get this recipe, all the recipes from this season of Cook's Country, testings, tastings. Also watch selected episodes of the show at cookscountrytv.com.